All right, so if the leaders' debate was political theater, then the post-debate scrum was a vaudeville circus act, and, not the good kind. Because on Wednesday night, during the French language leaders' debate, in the aftermath, the debate media scrum became ground zero for some political chaos. Of the 17 journalists who posed questions, 6 came from Rebel News, True North, and I'm pretty sure Juno Media. I could be wrong about that one. But yeah, these people, they're, these activists posing as journalists. Their questions weren't just provocative, they were engineered to derail the event, to derail the debate. Someone asked, how many genders are there? Questions about transgender women in sports. And I gotta say, Carney just really looked incredibly stupid, even entertaining this, right? He dismissed the questions as odd, and I props to Jagmeet Singh for refusing to engage with it at all, because these aren't good faith inquiries, right? This is content farming disguised as political journalism. And the biggest scandal wasn't what was asked, but what they were allowed to say at all. The Leaders Debate Commission had once again accredited Rebel News out of fear of litigation. In previous years, Rebel successfully sued for access to the debate, with courts ruling that denying them credentials infringed on press freedom. So, despite openly running a third-party advertiser campaign called For Canada, Rebel News is somehow back in the room. Ezra Levant has insisted that the campaign and the newsroom were separate entities. And, I'm not a lawyer, but it seems like very much a legal fiction that a lot of people from the debate commission were just had to pretend to believe. And that fiction very much came at a cost. Rebel journalists dominated the scrum on Wednesday night, pushed out the core mainstream media that was in attendance, and it led to a slew of confrontations. And so the next day, on Thursday, the English language debate took place, and Rebel News had shown up again, confronted the debate organizers, accused them of silencing dissenting voices. And the consequences of this being allowed were very imminent. Journalists on the ground were very much less willing to play along with this on Thursday. Ethan Cox of Ricochet Media directly confronted Ezra Levant, saying, "You created a circus here." And then also Stuart Benson of the Hill Times very much pressed Levant about the blurred lines between Rebel News and the For Canada campaign. So there was just a bunch of confrontation. Ezra Levant himself reportedly tried to disrupt the live CBC broadcast, and eventually Michelle Cormier, the executive director of the Leaders Debate Commission, had to intervene and escort Levant out of the building and revoked his media credentials. But again, by this time, nobody was willing to say anything. Nobody from the CBC or the debate commission was willing to say anything until everyone else had said something. And so the damage was already done. Levant denied any wrongdoing, deflected, refused to take any accountability. And then meanwhile, the mainstream media outlets failed to very much address this. The CBC didn't even mention it at all. The debate commission, basically just hoping to avoid a repeat of Wednesday night, just canceled the post-debate media scrum entirely, citing security concerns, which the reality was basically that the commission chose to fold and pull the plug rather than face another public meltdown. And meanwhile, the CBC completely failed to address these confrontations, address the reason why there wasn't any Q&A session after with the media. And Jagmeet Singh held an impromptu press conference elsewhere. Carney, Polyev, and Blanchet opted to just not do it. And that's the thing, is the CBC's post-debate broadcast, which was broadcasted outside of Maison de Radio Canada, they showed visible police presence as they came on the air, but said nothing. No explanation was given. No context was provided. The public was left to guess what had happened. In basically the next segment, 9 to 12 minutes later, they issued a statement blaming the commission and deflecting any type of responsibility. But even if the commission made the call, the CBC had every opportunity to report what was happening rather than to just remain impartial. And that's the thing, is that impartiality is what allowed this to take place. And because they didn't, and because they remained impartial in these moments, it's not just a failure of their journalism, it's a complicity through omission. And this isn't just about one night. It exposes a system that is incapable of distinguishing between journalism and outright grift, and just revealed just how fragile liberal democracy and the rituals of this illusion of choice, and how it's all just become so reactionary and just filled with spectacle. Very much like Rebel News has mastered a playbook that is lifted straight out of the American right-wing media. Disrupt institutions, cry censorship, fundraise off the backlash, and rinse, wash, and repeat. They position themselves as the voice of the silenced majority, enjoying the privilege of having access to politics on the national stage, which is, obviously an absurd contradiction. And that's the thing too, is that their model isn't about informing the public. It's about weaponizing outrage and grievance. It's to get attention, money, and influence. They don't have any principled stance. They contradict themselves on a regular basis. And this tactic, the thing that they do and pass off as journalism, it doesn't just hurt journalism. What it does, it plays right into the hand of the Liberal Party of Canada's monopoly on popular support. And whether Ezra Levant knows it or not, he is a key character in this strategy that the Liberals have perfected over time. It's called the Pied Piper strategy. I've talked about this before. You elevate the most unhinged and toxic elements of your opposition to make your own stale centrism look like a beacon of stability. Hillary Clinton tried this with Trump and it obviously backfired, but the Liberals have refined this formula since basically the Trump era. And it's the thing, you don't need the voters to love you, you just need them to fear the alternative. You don't need them to support you. You just need them to oppose your opposition. And when Rebel News and, these far-right maniacs are in the spotlight ranting about gender politics and wokeism, the Liberals get to play like the adults in the room. And this is how the political spectacle works in 2025. It's not about ideas. It's not about policy. It's about contrasts. And far-right agitators like Rebel News, they provide the perfect foil for the technocrats like Carney to look competent by comparison. And I got to say, he definitely dropped the ball for that opportunity. But just because of the outrage of the media, it ends up benefiting them. Meanwhile, true material issues like Indigenous rights, ecological collapse, the climate crisis, and wealth disparity, it all gets buried beneath this reactionary circus. And the CBC's role here can absolutely not be overlooked because they're, like I said, that post-debate silence, it's not just editorial omission, it's an institutional decision to maintain this illusion of neutrality, even if the cost of it is giving ground to overt fascists. Like I said, on Wednesday night, Rebel News essentially were allowed to be platformed to air genocide denial, anti-trans rhetoric, and outright indigenous genocide denial on national airwaves, on the public broadcaster. And CBC said nothing. They made no correction, no framing, all they did was play the victim and say, oh, some people said some things that weren't true. We'll essentially let you decide what that is. And again, that's not just letting it happen. It's amplifying it by treating it as if it's a part of normal discourse by just omitting it and then being outraged that it was said and not taking the time to correct it. And this is liberalism 101. This is what liberal institutions in Canada do best. They collapse under the weight of false equivalence. They pretend that neutrality means giving everyone a microphone, regardless of their intentions. But freedom of the press that people need to understand, especially in Canada, this Americanization of our politics comes with this idea that like free speech absolutism, it's not a suicide pact, okay? Not every bad actor deserves access, because if you don't give them access, they cry, oh, it's not democracy. No, if you know their intentions and what they're doing, you can establish that this is bad for society, bad for the common discourse. And you can make a judgment to say that not every voice is legitimate, rather than just this radical centrism, this radical naivety. Like, it's absurd. And what the two nights of the debate showed is that Canada's political media infrastructure is not prepared for the realities of the modern media disinformation ecosystem. The rules for these types of things have very much been written in a different era, one where the worst case scenario was bad faith partisanship or, disorganized self-sabotage. Those rules are now being used against the very institutions that they were meant to protect, because of the ability to have a form of inefficiency, because everybody was acting on some type of goodwill. But now that goodwill has just been completely extracted because the lack of trust in the system. Everyone has the most cynical view of things. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't, because those are the times we live in. But if the government and the public broadcaster is just pretending that that's not the case, then we're just sleepwalking into a world that's going to be dominated by these fascist adjacent voices. And someone needs to come along and draw a line here. Otherwise, this is going to keep happening. Like this post-debate scrum that happened on Wednesday night, and what was supposed to happen on Thursday night, these moments that are meant to represent democratic transparency, they're just going to continue to be hijacked by these reactionary media figures. And the CBC is going to just keep pretending that everything is fine and that they can remain impartial to this, and then play the victim when they end up being targeted for something that they allowed to happen in the first place. And in all of this, in all of the spectacle that this happens, in the end, who benefits? The Liberal Party of Canada benefits, and they reap the rewards, and the rest of us are left watching a democracy that looks like it's functioning, but it's very much just crumbling at the seams. And this wasn't just a complete clown show. It was absolutely emblematic of our political system. The question now is who's going to be willing to say these things on the record, who have actually like a platform enough for it to matter. Because people with Rebel News and organizations like that, the type of groups that operate and take part in frivolous litigation, they end up silencing people. And the people who have the power to essentially not be silenced, like the CBC, they sit in submission until, they sit and say nothing until everyone else has said something, and then they play the victim. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd.